Guys, I'm pretty sure the production team behind the glass over there is telling me that we are live. We are on broadcasting on the internet. My old brain remembered to hit the record button, so everything's going. I'm pretty sure we're here. Today, if you didn't notice, if you're listening in the car, first off, buckle up, use your turn signal. Second of all, we are joined by a very special guest we're excited to have. We're going to talk about Bellum today. That's going to be the main topic of discussion. A lot of people in chat over the last few weeks have been asking about it. So shout out to Karmakut for joining us, the man. How's it going, dude?
Hey, thanks for having me. Super happy to talk more about the game, answer any questions you guys might have, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be sweet. I'm excited. It's been on our radar. I don't know about Blues, but in my Discord, a ton of people have been talking about it. A ton of people have been asking about it on streams and during podcasts and stuff. So, um, super special shout out to Blue as well for reaching out to Karma and just working this whole thing out. I really appreciate you guys, and it's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna get into the
Yeah.
stuff. This is one of the reasons, for those of you who don't know, who've been around like a little while, one of the reasons I kind of started this podcast, and I've had some really awesome guests. We've been blessed to have some awesome guests over the years or year, is to bridge the knowledge gap. That's what my goal is for today. Bridge the knowledge gap between the dev and the gamer, and kind of like what goes into that. And like we were joking about before we went live, I'm like the kind of guy that's like, hey, dude, just like flip the button, just like fix it. Just why aren't you just fixing it? So there are a lot of people like that out there, like me. And so I just want to kind of get some knowledge and maybe bridge that gap a little bit and talk about the game. And we're always excited for indie games. Like we're always rooting for them, and we're excited for them. And to also be like a content creator that's doing this, we've seen it with a few other content creators. We at the show love this trend of content creators being able to branch out and do this. So that's the whole goal here, and we're pretty excited.
100%.
So would you where do you want to head first, Blue? I have like a ton of stuff that like I want to
Well,
ask. I don't know
definitely.
head first.
So, for the people that don't know what Bellum is there a simplified explanation for what Bellum will eventually become as a game?
Sure. So I guess the simplest way to put it is Bellum is aiming to be that hardcore tactical shooter that truly, and I mean truly, reinforces teamwork and cohesion and communication at the infantry scale, and trying to bring that new flavor of that next gen warfare. You know, whether it be e-war or counterinsurgency operations, or a side of counterinsurgency operations that has never been done before. That asymmetrical style of battle, and just really focusing on small unit tactics and trying to make it a space where you can finally fulfill a lot of those, what I call, military gamer fantasies that I think a lot of us have when we go into certain games like, Squad or Arma. We all think, oh, maybe there's going to be an ambush moment. Maybe we're going to have an awesome break contact moment. Maybe we're going to assault this thing as a squad or a platoon. I think there's a lot of those fantasies in that space
Hmm.
that a lot of games say that they'll, help you live or you'll be able to experience. But in a lot of places that ends up just falling short. And a lot of that essence of that original vision or dream is not really attainable. So that's really the space we're trying to build. And that's what our very specific goal is trying to fulfill a lot of those tactical player versus player military gamer fantasies in an accessible fashion.
I like that. I think we'll get into that for sure, like how you guys plan on doing that. Um, but that's cool to hear, because if I think back to like some of my coolest moments in video games, it always I always recall like times when teamwork happened. Like if we did something really cool as a team is always really cool. Like I've had some really cool pushes and comebacks in like Rainbow Six Siege, playing off each other's utility. Even squad that you mentioned, I've done a couple times, like dropping in behind enemy lines in a chopper and then getting ambushed, and just like the chaos and like everybody working together to try to push through it and communicate. And I feel like in a multiplayer game, like having those times when the team can come together and pull off something is like, those are just like really cool moments. And the fact that you guys are trying to make those happen more often is the most exciting part about it, like to me, because yeah,
I
that
mean,
Yeah.
that's
I'm
what it's.
definitely reminded of like all the, you know, Arma servers that you and your team have ran, and COG events and stuff like that. It feels like like a coalition of what you guys, or a combination of everything that's those moments have led to now getting put into your own game? Is that something kind of like in your headspace is what you're looking forward to or
Yeah, I
towards to?
think there's a little bit of old magic and new magic when I think it comes to like the philosophy of what we're trying to share with everyone in the experience in the game. A lot of that old magic comes from, when I remember Squad as a really new title, the community was much smaller than it is currently, and
Hmm.
like the culture was vastly different.
Correct.
And just remembering how those games played, like of course some of that is nostalgia, but there was definitely a different level of cohesion and teamwork than you would see widespread today in Squad. And I think there's a lot of things that we want to do to make sure that we retain that magic as long as possible. And then as far as the new magic, just like it has been my mission over the past 8-10 years in the gaming space, very 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 specifically within any game that I
Hmm.
play, and in with it, almost a niche within a niche of trying to make
Yeah.
teamwork possible in every game and making it the utmost important thing, whether it was Tarkov or Sandstorm modding or Armor 3 or Squad or whatever the case may be. Like that has been my adult life goal. And so trying to like package it in a way that is accessible and doesn't require joining a hardcore community. You need to attend trainings every day, or having to add
Yeah.
15,000 mods, or figuring out the server, or figuring out the player roster, and then getting the server spun up, and then getting everyone in in a specific event. Like basically just leveraging all that experience and trying to package it into the most seamless, painless experience that many people can enjoy as consistently as possible is kind of the angle that we're taking.
You're asking for a lot. for I feel like for someone who would be randomly just coming in from the game. Again, you're Bellum is definitely going to be the niche within a niche of a game in the
Hmm.
Milsim gaming sphere. So, but like my first immediate thought, it's like, okay, then how do you start grabbing like random players into that game without kind of what Squad does, where it became more mainstream and you get those random players that just want to get in there, and they, especially with the noodle arms they have in that game now, it's just running, spraying, praying, kind of like that. It looks cool, effects look great, but like, how do you get? And I'm sure you will get a little bit more into it in terms of like game mechanics and whatever you're able to share. But like, how do you get the normal average Joe to
Sure,
come and
that's
start working that way?
sure. It's that
You
that is
know?
a bear of an answer. I mean, it's related to everything from like development and design philosophy to new player pipeline. It's also even related to marketing and the financing strategy behind it. It's related to almost
Multi-layered.
every aspect. Yeah, every aspect of the game, to suppression, to medical, uh, to how the server experiences, what in-game support there are for communities and socials. It is all encompassing. It is not a simple like we do this and we'll get players to work together. It has to live
Y
and breathe throughout the entire essence of the experience, and every aspect of design needs to encourage or promote that kind of behavior. In addition to just self-selecting to a degree and making sure that I think that's one of the biggest problems that a lot of these games have. And once again, we can get into this later. I think it's related a lot to finances. But once these games start throwing and casting wider nets, whether it's with free weekends or just inflooding, like just massive influx of players via whatever means that they have, whether it's Twitch drops, free weekend, whatever the case may be, if there's not a
Mhm.
solid structure to retain that community's culture, or even a solid player pipeline to introduce new players into, quote unquote, the correct way to play or how to play, then I think it's very easy to destroy it, or to lose it over time. So that's just one of the
Feel
missions, and
that.
like it's not a sexy answer. It's like we're gonna make sure that we have
No,
these
no,
systems
definitely.
in
But
place. Yeah.
for me, again, I feel like I guess
Mm.
I'm kind of target audience because like I get that answer because I remember old Squad and again really just go back to your armor services like that type of teamwork that you got, and that's what I know what I miss specifically, and I know for sure that's why you're making, like, again, maybe it is the nostalgia part, like you said as well too, that like maybe glorifies it a bit in my brain as well too. But like the fact of especially I know your main goal, like you said over these 10 years, is even like learning like small unit tactics and like CQB and like somehow implementing that within a video game and making it the most realistic um experience someone could have within a video game itself.
Mhm.
So I totally get that answer for sure.
So
Awesome.
I want, if I may, before we go too
Mhm.
much farther, I always like to, because as you're getting closer to like starting to have, you know, other people's eyes and hands on this game to be able to play it for the pre-orders and stuff, taking like a look back on it, I'm always curious as to like the inception of these things and these ideas. Were you ever when did you know you wanted to make a game? Was there like a moment, or is this something that you've always kind of wanted to do for a long time, or was there ever a moment where you threw your hands up and like, I can do this better? I need to
Sure.
like, and I need to start getting this done.
I really appreciate that answer because I think it gives a lot of insight into the design of the game or why the game exists or who we're targeting, right? So I used to be very content with the space that I was in. I used to have a lot of faith in the products and the games that were out. And just I think it was during the COVID, you know, whether COVID hit these dev studios hard or their priorities changed or their design principles changed or whatever the case may be. I know also during this time there's a whole period where publishers came in and you started seeing a lot of things change in the space. New World Interactive ended up becoming a shell of what it previously was. Team 17 bought out Hell Let Loose from Black Matter, and that exchange was not pretty, I'll say. There were a lot of a lot of rough patches during that exchange.
Mhm.
And I just started to think about um, what I, as an individual who is super passionate about the tactical gaming space, very specifically the realism or the platoon scale shooter side of things, what the future would look like, right? Because I grew up with these games essentially. I love these games. I spent every day of my life at some point in some years grinding, making content, teaching people, hosting events, and I was just thinking about the future because in the past, like my business partner Barton has always been like, "Hey, maybe we should make a game." And in the past, I've always given him the answer of like, "Ah, no, I'm pretty happy with what's going on. I have faith in these studios, and I trust that like I'm pretty satisfied. I don't see the need, right?" So I guess what ended up happening is I started to see the need. I started to see certain experiences not necessarily catering to an audience, the original audience that they were really made for, and they started to cast wider nets. They started to change game design principles, and I felt like we had been stuck. I mean, just that period of COVID was just such a stagnation in the industry, in this part of the niche that there was not a lot of forward progress being made, and it was just like so much time when you think about how long ago or how long we've been playing Tarkov or Squad or Hell Let Loose and even Ready or Not, right? Ready or Not's been in the works for years at this point, a long time. I just felt like it was time for someone to anyone to make the next evolution, to improve upon systems, to fix certain problems in the game, and to improve the experience. And I really did not see that happening. If I knew of someone or I knew of a project that was coming out that could have, I probably would have waited. I probably wouldn't have embarked on this journey because this is like it's been a massive. This has been no small task that we've
Mhm.
started, but um, yeah, it just so I started experimenting with things, and I mean, I've always experimented in the past, whether it's mods in Sandstorm or Arma or Squad, or with events, One Life events or Armor and Squad, public servers, etc. And so, like, I just felt like it got to a point where I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm very disillusioned with the current space. I have a couple options. I can sit here and wait, right? And I can watch project after project come out. I can watch new projects come in and they're not necessarily experienced with the space and they have a lot of problems that have existed in other games that they failed to fix or address because they don't know the history of it all or they don't have the experience. And I just thought, what do I do? Right? Do I just stop playing tactical games? Do I just like switch to do something else or what's my next step? And I just realized that like I love this kind of gaming too much. And I had such a wealth of experience that I don't think, very few people I think you could point to have played as much of these platoon shooters or tried to do as much of the teamwork stuff or hosted these scale of events and have experience on the community hosting side with the Karmakut community or squad ops or KT or COG or whatever. And then also on the server end, understanding the perils of being a server host within the space and community servers with AWN and knowing all the server backend stuff. So I was just trying to think who would I trust to make the next experience that improves and pushes the goal forward and pushes the line forward and gets us to innovate and experience cool new things in the space. And I didn't have anyone I could point to. I didn't have a project I could put faith in. And so like it just came down to if I wanted to see that thing happen, if I wanted to continue seeing the space improve, I would have to throw my hat in the ring. or just wait
Mhm.
forever. And that's just not something, especially as a content creator, like I'm no stranger to taking risks. I dropped out of college to be a content creator. Like that's just, I guess, my personality is that, like, if I see a need, if I see that we can possibly do something, like I'll pull the trigger, I'll take the risk, and if I fail, I fail. But this was something that I truly did love, and I felt like I could be of value in the space. I could create a new experience, I could fix problems, and I could deliver something that a need was not met.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I feel like that what you said is just like it happens often. It not in just the milsim genre, but a lot of games where they start out, with an audience in mind, and then they realize that they need, more funding, or they need more players, and they start to change things to kind of cater to a newer or a different audience. And also, I think you're feeling as a content creator and someone who's very familiar with the games that you play is also not an odd feeling, because I feel like a lot of people are the same way. Like they just wish and dream that they could make their own game, and it's pretty cool to see you pulling that off, man. It's pretty neat. That's why we're big fans of these kinds of projects, because it's
Yeah, I appreciate
want to
that.
see more of it. It's cool. We always talk about it's like what would be like your favorite game. It'd be so cool to build one day, but it's it's so cool to see it happening. Was there ever a time, like, early on, you I'm sure I'm not familiar with like your development skills and stuff, but how did you go about assembling a team? Did you approach other people or other studios at first, or did you have people in mind who you wanted to bring on board to help pull this together? Because the team is
Sure.
huge, right?
It's not huge. It's
I
just
mean,
like there's.
I didn't mean numbers huge. I meant important. Sorry. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, yeah,
The
yeah.
importance is huge. Yeah.
that's my bad.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Totally
No,
understand.
he's got a 300-man studio right now.
Yeah, so I mean, there's just so many unique advantages to my position, just being within the niche and having, not only the experience but the connections as well. Just being a content creator, I had a lot of visibility over the years. In the past, like I've worked on plenty of modding projects within Arma, Ready or Not, or Squad, and just like seeing and working with people and collaborating to push certain things, it just leads you to like-minded people, or people who
Mhm.
understand what you're trying to do with the technical skills to help create it. And also just gathering interest from, I've had plenty of developers reach out in DMs and or through emails and just say like, hey, I really enjoy what you're doing over the past couple of years, of course. And so when I started looking for a team, I just, reached out through the contacts that I had previously. I didn't really, it's not like we threw up a job listing and made a team
Yeah,
from completely
exactly.
scratch or whatever. Yeah. So I kind of had a good idea of like a core group already that would be willing to take on this endeavor, that is familiar with the space. And yeah, I was very fortunate for that. But that was like one of the many advantages, that helped encourage me to start this journey, was just recognizing, I was in a position where, like, if any game was going to succeed, if any game was going to continue pushing forward, like, us as content creators, and especially content creators within the tactical space, we have a very unique advantage over, studios that start from scratch. And so that was kind of encouragement to put together the team and to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like to think about things from a business standpoint, and the fact that, like, what a lot of studios starting from scratch don't have is like the reach and the ability to like market their game, but that's what you already have, that part. So
Hmm.
then you can just focus on building the game and the experience that you want, and the rest should fall into place. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
To have that kind of set up. And then before we get into like where the game and stuff sets now, I don't know why. I like the nostalgia and like the history and stuff of like how you guys have like put this together. So was there ever a time you can point to in a play test where like you had a moment, or the first time that like the teamwork moments that you're looking for happened in like a play test, and you got excited? Like, is there ever something where you're like, oh, this is gonna
Yes.
start to work?
100%.
I'm
And I
excited. I'm
really,
excited
yeah,
for that.
I really do appreciate these questions because, yeah, a lot of people are like, will there be vehicles? Will there be like, it's very like, binary answers. So I do appreciate you digging a little bit deeper. So, yeah, so a lot of the core design philosophy from in Bellum comes from a mod I made for Squad called Dynamic Direction. And that was a Squad mod that we hosted for, maybe a year or two. It was, pretty popular, had 5 stars, had like tens of thousands of people's download, check it out. And that was like kind of the first foray. I didn't even back then, I didn't even think of making it into a game. I had no intentions of turning Dynamic Direction into like a larger experience. It was just my contribution to the community to try and do what I could to improve the experience. But I think there was one gameplay loop in there's a couple gameplay loops in Dynamic Direction. Once again, public server mod, anyone could download, enjoy, and enjoy. That really opened my eyes to what was possible, and that the gameplay that I'm looking for was attainable by the public. And so basically, one of those moments was, I don't want to get too in the weeds to describe this anecdote, but basically, one of the maps opens up and all the players on one team start in helicopters, and on the other team, all the players start on the ground and they have to spread out and defend an area. And I'm in spectator. I'm not commanding, because I know a lot of people go, "Oh, Karmakut effect. He's leading the team. He's telling people what to do." Like the experience is biased because of that. But I would sit in admin cam in a lot of these Dynamic Direction games, and so this one in particular. I essentially just watched the team come up with this idea, because the way the whole thing was designed, where they determined how they are going to air assault this island, and watching all the helicopters come in together, synchronized, having them all work together to build up this one base, and then continue as a group. That was one of them. That's a very simple one. The other one was when we started to see dynamic convoys and ambushes occur within the game mode, just because I know that that is a core military gamer fantasy that I think a lot of people, a lot of people think, oh, I'd love to do a convoy op. Oh, I'd love to do like some kind of ambush op. But seeing that happen dynamically in game by players on the team, just without any guidance, was super interesting as
Hmm.
well. And I
They're trying
can
to
kind
force
of
it.
describe that. Yeah. Where that just because of the design and the value put on logistics and how we simplified the logistics within the experience, uh, you saw this natural dynamic where instead of the typical squad meta, if you're not aware of the squad meta, like logistics in squad is super annoying for a lot of people. It usually is just one guy driving the truck somewhere, dropping stuff off and leaving, and that's the extent of logistics in squad for the most part. But what you ended up seeing in Dynamic Direction was, because of how we had designed the game mode, is that one Logi driver driving into the fob would end up just getting waxed, because there's so much activity, because we simplified the objectives. So the natural thinking, or like because of the values we had put in place, what you eventually saw was that the blue four players would decide, okay, we noticed that logistics are very important, because there's only one thing we need to supply. Everyone on the team recognizes it, and because of there's not too much value placed in other objectives, we're going to divert some resources into convoying the logistics truck in, because this run is so important and it's recognized by everyone that it is so important. So you saw natural convoy operations occur, because players just figured it out. It was intuitive, it was natural, that like, hey, these are so important and they're stopping it. We're going to do what we can to push the supplies through. And so naturally, as a response, without any guidance from me or whoever, you saw the insurgents naturally pick up on this as well. And you saw this escalation that happened in real time, where players on the insurgent team were like, huh, I can't just one shot this Logi driver as a lone wolf sitting out here in the random place anymore, because they're driving it with a logistics convoy. Let's set up an actual ambush. And so this kind of thinking and this kind of gameplay really opened my eyes to like, hey, players, if the goals are aligned and if it is intuitive and things make sense, will do realistic things, but you have to put the value in the gameplay design to reinforce or encourage it. Because
Hmm.
I think this also opened my mind to like a whole bunch of other things. Is players can handle complicated metagame things. There are so many complicated board games, so many complicated video games in general, whether it's RTS games or MOBAs or MMORPGs. Like there's thousands of games that are infinitely more complex than a shooter like Squad, or any of these other tactical shooters. I don't necessarily think the complexity is what is barring players from doing these things. I think it is the drivers and the behavioral design that has been in place for the goals of what these teams are trying to do. And that's just kind of the thinking throughout a lot of the design, is how do we align what you would do in real life with what we want you to do in game, and put that kind of put those values in the right place, so that your natural thinking feels intuitive and feels normal, and you can execute it and be effective. So that was like an eye-opening experience. Those were two very eye-opening experiences. Just seeing things where if the goals are in place and people are aligned and it is intuitive, players will do pretty crazy things. But it's only when you start getting super gamified and players are able to min max, or the game is too arcadey, that you start,
Mhm.
there's no need to do those things. It's not because they're too complex, it's because there's no need. You can go to the lowest common denominator or the lowest route of gameplay and just play the experience. And if you have that as an option, that will be the route that players take.
Dude, that's
I
nutty.
see why you went. Yeah, I see why
I
they went
didn't
for the
realize.
combat outpost now. That's why.
Yeah.
I see the vision now, and that you brought up dynamic. Is it dynamic what again? I'm sorry.
Dynamic direction. Yeah.
Direction. I almost like attention. Um, yeah, I get it now. I see the philosophy. It's almost like you're making it simpler,
Yes.
but it's more dynamic in general of like forcing the player to work as a team and more realistically, like you said. And yeah, I get it now. I see you were like, okay, so but you said at that time you weren't thinking about making games. Did you like go back to that moment in your head and then like this is what I want to make a game on? Or was it,
That's when I
when did
saw it
that
was
spark?
possible. That's when I saw it was
Okay.
possible, and I've always so it also is combined with my I guess disillusionment. I don't know, is that a word? I just
It is
ended
now.
ended up yeah, I just ended up getting disillusioned with mods, and this just comes from my squad
Yeah,
modding
I feel that. No,
experience.
I feel it.
Yeah, and just Arma 3 modding, like, mods are great. I like first off and foremost, mods are great. I respect modding. I appreciate what modding has done for the entire gaming community.
The modders that do it for
Yes,
free,
Shout out.
100%. Yeah.
shout out 100%. Like, I get you. I've been there. I understand it. I totally like I totally believe in it. But just as a player within the space in general, I'm exhausted of having to mod the game to have it play how I want it to play. Like, it should just come out of the box how it should. And I should not have to jam 90 mods onto the thing, then deal with server settings and then dealing with mod incompatibilities with one another. And then one modder breaks
Mhm.
this thing, and then one modder says, "Hey, I'm
An
done
update
updating
breaks
this." So
all
it's
the
that,
mods.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like, I get it. It's cool. It's fantastic. It's an amazing tool and feature. But like, I just like sometimes I'll go back and I'll play a AAA game and I'm like what can't just someone make a game that is polished with all the features that are meant to work together, and just like, of course it's never going to be AAA quality from an indie studio, but at least have like things work generally together from the get-go smoothly. Because yeah, as a modder personally, it was excruciating modding squad over, I think they made it a little bit better for sure, and they've been more communicative recently. But like, modding squad
With the
was,
SDK and stuff.
I
Yeah.
hated it. I hated it so much. So that's why we don't really in our game, like, I don't want to bait other modders into that experience while the game is in active development. That's why we're not doing mods. Like, there is a world where we do mods when the game is stable, it's done, it's like where we're in a good
It's
spot where
1.1, 1.1 or 1.1 at that point. Like
yeah.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And people can do it and it makes sense, and it's like we're not actively changing massive overhauls to systems and like everything breaks and it's just constantly an
So what
absolute
squad
monkey
did?
show.
Got it. Okay.
That
Yeah.
that whole thing was wild. Like, talking about watching stuff unfold from admin cam. Like, I didn't realize like building a game, and I've heard people talk about it before, like player behavior and stuff. I just feel like it's like almost like a psychology experiment to see, like, if you do
It
this,
is.
like, what will players like naturally do. I
It
just see you in
is.
like
Yeah.
I see you in like a white lab coat watching mice go through a maze and like see if they can figure it
Checking
out.
off the board. Just all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it 100% does feel like that sometimes. And like, I have years and years of experience doing it, from squad events to squad modding to ARMA events to ARMA modding, just playing with all different kinds of feature tweaks, all different kinds of systems, different rules, different experiences, different eras, different, like, I've,
Hmm.
like, so when I think, once again, going back to like, who do I trust to make the next game? Who has that much experience? Like, I was in a very unique position where I was privileged enough to spend all that time wasting it essentially it's essentially wasted time before this, just sitting there and just messing
Yeah.
around with these things. and
Yeah.
and
Research.
so yeah, research.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, but yeah, 100% a lot of experimentation through a lot of different experiences. I mean, even like if you look at the Tarkov stuff, right? Like, figuring out, okay, how do we get realistic team tactics to work in Tarkov? How do we get to work in Sandstorm? And I was able that, like, all that stuff
Hmm.
over the years just opened my eyes to like what works, what doesn't work, what behavior is important, what rewards are important, why do players act a certain way, and then also just getting in touch with, pairs has been a massive help, or even some of the veterans or subject matter experts in the past that we've gotten to be able to sit down and talk to you, like, why does this happen in the real world? What makes these tactics real? Why are they doing these things? And just having that experience is just like, holy crap, you know, like no one else or very few people else on the planet, I think, have had that experience or have that
Yeah.
privilege to talk to so much, experience so much, and to like just try to make that happen in a video game. So I was like, I gotta take a shot. Like it'd be a shame for me to waste all those years of learning these things and not being able to try to create something for people to enjoy.
Cool. So I want to. I don't know if Blue has many other lead up questions. I kind of want to paint um like set the stage before we get into like the actual game itself and the mechanics and things. Who has like the creative control of it? Like who is like the lead game designer who has the most control over that? I'm assuming it's you. Do you have other team members that pour into that? And to follow up to that, like what is something that this game has that you've wanted? I feel that you've wanted for a long time. Like it has to have this
Sure,
mechanics
sure.
wise.
So we'll break it down. For if I forget the second question, just remind me because this first one will take a little bit of time as
You
well.
might be lucky and I'll forget it too. And then we'll just move
I
on.
got you guys.
So as far as like how the studio is structured, I'm very fortunate to so my business partner as well, like also just very fortunate as well in that regard too, because starting a business is no easy task. You know, there's so much you have to know, there's so many hurdles, so many loops, there's legal stuff, there's financial stuff. I was able to like I'd started a business with my current business partner in Bellum before called AWN.gg, and that's like a server hosting company. And that kind of also started the same way. Like that server hosting company, like we saw a need in the in the tactical gaming space of like we don't really like working with these other server hosting companies. We'll just make our own. And so I've been working with that business partner for his name is Barton, by the way. I've been working with him for probably a decade at this point, and we spun up that whole business. So we have a lot of business experience working together and growing businesses and all the financial legal stuff. And he helps out a ton with that. But both of us are mainly, you could say, the majority owners within the studio. That being said, I of course am like mainly the creative side of things, the marketing side of things, and he's mainly a lot of the programming side he helps out with, as well as the business and the legal stuff. Just because he's a nerd for that stuff, he loves it, he's really good at it. Uh, so that's how that dynamic works. As far as like design decisions within the studio, I'm very fortunate just because a lot of the people on the team, they're not random people, they're people who have like I've worked with in the past or I've talked to, and they kind of understand the vision already. I have the trust of the team in general, but like we still have very passionate debates about anything in the game, whether it's how we release certain things, certain gameplay features, how we announce certain things, the looks of certain things as well. And so
Yeah, you
we have
need
an
that.
open door
Yeah.
policy. Yeah, so we talk. There's always passionate debates. You could tell people really care. Things get I don't know if I want to say heated, but they're very animated discussions about a lot of topics, and we have a lot of cool perspectives because we have people who played some role play stuff. We had people who played like normal squad matches. We had people who played competitive squad. So like we get a whole bunch of
Completely
different
different,
viewpoints.
yeah, ways of thinking for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and even arcade games. Yeah,
I think if you're working on a project like this and you don't have spirited discussions, like something's wrong. Like, I think that's pretty
Yeah, you
par
don't want
for
a
the
bunch of
course.
yes men, and then by the time you get to the end product,
Yeah.
it's not at all what you wanted. I mean, it's exactly what you wanted, but it's not overall. It's not going to be
The best.
the best game. Yeah.
yeah. I'm a big believer in the debates and talking things out and just hearing and listening to people because even when I go through like I read all the YouTube comments, I read all the YouTube comments of other people's videos about us. I read all the Twitter stuff. I
Oh,
like
I
and there's
bet.
some ideas
Yeah.
I'll pull from there. Like some people have good feedback, good criticism. And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
I'm not shy. I'm not a coward to any good criticism. Like I'll hear it, I'll listen to it because I think at the end of the day, whatever makes the game better is makes the game better, and that's like a goal.
Nice. So the follow up was, is there anything in this game like a mechanic that isn't in others that you're like it has to have this, or even like just a design choice like that you've wanted in a game that you're like standing firm on? We have to have this.
Oh, the cruiser weapons are pretty cool.
Crew serve weapons for one, especially just because of all the Arma modded stuff that we do. Like we started to see like the utility in that and how cool it was. And then it's just the combination of a bunch of features that we have never seen before in unison. So having armor work and having yeah, I mean these things are now I think you consider them staples or standards. But back when we started development, it was like yeah squad doesn't have wind. I think wind is important. It doesn't have body armor value. I think body armor value is important. We have a lot of mechanics that put pressure on the player life, not just like how many kills you get or how many objectives you take, but how much you
Yeah.
die. how much you die is very important in like creation and encouragement of real world tactics, because that, in my opinion, and from those I talk to, that is the driver behind a lot of the realistic and authentic things that you see, is the limiting of the life, or having the value of the life, the actual value of the life, not some arbitrary ticket number, but knowing that what you do and how you play and how you die affects your state in the game. That was a super important one in the platoon shooter space that has never really been seen or done before, in my opinion. Um,
At least not on a game side. Modding for sure, but not game
yeah, and then just,
specifically.
I know Big Fred even talks about this one as well, but the game mode itself, the game mode itself, I think yeah, it's kind of a shame that after 10 what years, the most, the interesting thing about like game modes these days in the platoon shooter space is go in the circle, stand in the circle, and then we go to the next circle and we stand in that circle, and then
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
and just like, I'm a big board game and card game guy. I play, I've played MMOs and RTSs in the past and like super complex stuff. And I just know that there has to be more that we can explore within like the authentic milsim like shooter space, that is more interesting than this gameplay loop. So that was a big one.
Correct.
Is just creating the game mode itself, having creating a dynamic space that was different from, I think every game out there right now. The platoon skill side is go here, stand in the circle, go to the next circle style gameplay loop. And I think 10 years later, like, I think we're ready for
Or
something.
something dynamic, some dynamic objective of like how you have the exploding the enemy cache and stuff like that, and that very specific animation of setting the charge and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, what, why is this, has it, I you know what, I've only seen this in a mod, actually, now I think about it. I haven't seen it in an actual, the closest we got is maybe what, Battlefield 3 Rush. That's about it,
Yeah, the
Yeah,
incoms.
to blow something up. Yeah.
yeah,
uh,
and even our game mode itself, like if you look at it, there's definite inspiration from things that have been done in the past. But the combination, I think, of all the aspects of all the goals and the things that you can do are what make the
Mhm.
experience truly different and dynamic. Because that's another thing. And there's a little bit of a tangent, but that's another thing that I think is very key to these authentic tactical gaming experiences, is the aspect of the unknown. And I think not too many games leverage the aspect of the unknown, because a lot of real world tactics are rooted in that, and rooted in the uncertainty of what you're about to do, and ensuring that you have the best odds of succeeding with the least amount of loss to your force. But like so many games have all the information available on the map, or you know exactly where the objective is, or like that drives player behavior in a very in my opinion, detrimental way to what I think, in my opinion, what the direction that these games should be oriented in. So it's like a combination of a lot of different things. So like, once again, this unfortunately going to be the answer to a lot of these questions, is that it's affected by all systems, and it's the combination of all systems. But
Mhm.
that's like a big part of the design behind Bellum. It's not like super simple brutish design, or like, if we think shooting's too easy, we're not just gonna increase sway and make shooting harder. We're going to analyze like what is actually the systems that are in place that are making it too easy. What are the drivers behind the pacing of the gameplay? How can we make it harder without like just blinding you, or doing
Yeah, or
very
artificially
brutish
making it
things?
harder.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about that game mode too, because you talk about dynamic objectives like that. Right now, you just have, I mean, planned right now is that it's. I guess I would. It's. I don't know if I would even really call it a game mode. Is it more of like that's the game itself, but maybe the different objectives within the play area will change and be dynamic, and that's how it'll feel different every
to
time, or
to a
you know,
degree.
to a
So
degree. Yeah,
the
you don't
way I
want
would,
it's not going to be procedurally generated every single time, but it could be. Yeah, continue. I want to hear your answer. My bad.
for sure. So the way, and the reason why, like, I'm a little confident in this, is because it has been tested. Like a good amount of the things that we're talking about doing have been tested. They've been tested at scale, and we've like been able to see it concretely work. Is that in
Hmm.
dynamic direction? Obviously there were flaws because there was a mod. We couldn't fix anything. I disclaim everything. It wasn't perfect, right? But the information that we gleaned from dynamic direction was, if you give players a circle and you give them the objectives to place, what players can end up doing is they can determine by the, because the selection of terrain that you're playing over is random, but it is large. Like it's maybe 1,000 or so clicks across
Oh wow. Okay. Like the actual the entire area, or
the
are you talking about
playable
just
area.
dynamic
So the
direction
map itself
specifically?
would be 4 by 4 kilometers, but within the map, we have these zones that are created. And this is where you could kind of say, oh, it's kind of like King of the Hill. Kind of yes, but the zones are massive.
Eh,
The zones are very large, and it just indicates the area of play where objectives are active and are working and count towards your win condition. But you
mhm.
essentially, I'm just going to try to explain this as simply as possible to getting too lost in the weeds. Essentially, there's a zone on the map that changes from round to round. Like it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same thing. Just because I've seen the issue with static flag layers or static cap points every time you load up the same map, it's you see the metas form. So you have these varied circles that differ across this wide area, and then you have the ability for players to go in and choose where they're going to place their objectives. So where they're going to put the pieces on their board, and that's mainly determined by what selection of terrain is available, and that's a key part I think of milsim gaming that is missing, or platoon scale shooter gaming that's missing, is terrain analysis. A lot of the time gamers don't like there's like, I'm going where the game tells me to go. Like I don't care what the thing, I'm not reading the map, I'm not looking at the height, I'm not seeing like, oh, this is a good position. Really, I'm just going to YOLO to the objective. um but because you have the freedom to place the objective in dynamic direction and in Bellum. Players actually analyze the map, and because you are doing that, what that leads players to do is cohesively as a team determine these things and work together to ensure that the placement is correct and to protect those placements. Because there's a lot of people that I remember playing squad. It's like if certain objectives just don't look great, like I'm gonna avoid it, or I'm just gonna do whatever I can to like metagame my way through it, or to
Yeah,
like
if it's
like I
not
rush
a if
this
it's not
certain
a
point.
linear objective, they'll just completely move around it and not even worry about it.
Yeah, but when you have agency, when you give players like some kind of ownership over that choice, like they care about it more, obviously, because
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
the ones making the decision. That decisions rest with them, and like to some degree, especially within like the platoon scale shooting of things, like people have reputations, like it or not, like you start to recognize good squad leaders, good platoon leaders. You start to recognize good decisions. You also, to some degree, for better or worse, you recognize bad decisions. So there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to placing these objectives. And so people take it more seriously. And so it's more engaging of a team kind of dynamic because of that situation. In addition to that, once you're in the circle and you've established your objectives based on what's going on the map, where players are, what your team is doing, what your team makeup is, the selection of the terrain that you're maneuvering through or whatever, that's where our multiple win conditions come into play. So there's 3 win conditions when it comes to the game mode, and they're very intuitive. They're super intuitive. They make sense. It's nothing too crazy. The first is to generate influence. So our game is based on counterinsurgency operations, and probably the heart of all counterinsurgency operations is to win the population, gain influence, and to solidify your I I don't want to use the word reign, but essentially reign
I
over the
mean, what,
territory,
civilians
your
in game
control.
type of influence, or
No,
like?
it's just for right now,
Okay.
for the initial implementation. Basically, your objectives will generate points called influence, and once you reach a certain amount of points of influence, then you can consider yourself in control of the area and you've won. Right? So there's already a conflict driver there that pushes players to find, as logically and as intuitively as you would in a insurgency operation, to destroy enemy objectives because they are, you know, abstracted, of course, creating influence in the region. Right. So that's the one win condition, is just building up your stuff and generating influence and denying the enemy in that race. Right. Because so you're going out and you're hunting their objectives, because if you stop their objectives, they stop generating influence. Very intuitive, I think. It's just like a real world counterinsurgency operation would work. You have both sides trying to push each other out. The second win condition is to displace or push the enemy out of the zone. Now, this
Mhm,
is more or
mhm.
less a mercy mechanic, but you can do some pretty interesting things with it, which we've seen in dynamic direction, where your team is able to cohesively and all at once essentially kill all the enemies in the zone or push them out and deny them entry into the zone in the first place. So it's kind of a mercy mechanic. But essentially,
Yeah.
if you're able to push them out, then you push them out, right? You've won the zone, you've won that area, and that's another win condition. And the third win condition is simply finding and destroying the enemy. And I think that is like one of the things that I think got lost or perverted, I guess you could say, in the course of tactical gaming. Is I think PTFO ended up becoming very detrimental to the kind of experiences that some of these realistic games or authentic games want to pursue. And the reason for that is because when you have PTO as such a high, or PTFO, excuse me, so play the fucking objective, when you have that as such a high priority, you end up dissolving all other aspects of realistic infantry tactics and techniques or strategies or whatnot, because players will wave and they'll throw their bodies for the sole purpose of the objective, and that destroys suppression. It destroys any reasoning of like, oh, my life is important, because the objective has become more important than your life. And so that is where, like, that was a super eye-opening realization as well, is when you have certain objectives that outweigh the value of the life, you don't get authentic gameplay infantry experiences because they're not thinking like that. The only space in my experience talking with some of these former combat veterans or whatnot in this space of when that would ever be the case is hostage rescue, right? Is when you, with the life of the hostage is valued more than the life of the operators or the assault team. And that's when you would see things like Call of Duty tactics, where they're running through the freaking building, right, as fast as humanly possible. Like you watch Delta or whoever when they're doing the hostage rescue, because those values are in place, those values are aligned. The value of the hostage matters more, and so you end up seeing them just, they don't care about their life. Well, they care about it, enough that they're doing things safely, but they're blazing through these things at lightning speed. Versus if you had the time and space and your goal was to do something without dying, you would see teams take it much slower, as you would in real life,
Mhm.
right? Because the values are not aligned in a lot of these games. So the third win objective is to simply attrite the enemy force, or to kill enough of them that you have determined control over the area. So all three objectives are rather intuitive, I think, or like I hope,
You
which is
hope, yeah,
just
yeah.
generate, establish, right, build things and generate your influence, and deny the enemy their influence generation, push them out of the zone, or kill them, like literally kill them. And because also the kills are as valuable as a win condition, more so than like circles or cap points. It's just another encouragement or reinforcement of your life matters and you should not die. That is the core driver of like a lot of tactics, is you should not die. Like if you have that thinking going into a lot of these games, and the one place I can point to where it's very apparent that it is possible in a video game is Tarkov, right? Or any of the hardcore extraction shooters where you feel like you do not want to die. Of course, there's other reasons for that, whether it be the loot
Mhm.
system or the progression system. There's things in our game that will obviously reinforce it in our unique way of how you should not die.
Yeah, can you give some examples of those? Because I'm very interested to hear, like, because I hear like the win conditions, and you're saying that like you're gonna value the life. Like, exactly how are you doing that? I'm excited to hear.
Sure. In my experience running One Life events, the most impactful thing that you could ever do as a game designer, as an event hoster, or anything to make your experience more realistic is literally limit the lives, right? Tarkov does this. I mean, in many ways, this is why I think Gray Zone Warfare PvP feels the interesting way that it does, is because players can just respawn and run back. I don't know if I'm necessarily a fan of like the open session thing, because that creates that kind of problem, right? But in games like Tarkov or other events, One Life events, where the lives are restricted, players will act slower because they literally value their life as they kind of would in the real world situation. Obviously, it's not one to one because it is still a video game. But when you
Mhm.
limit the lives, that is probably the most impactful thing you could ever do to make an infantry experience more engaging or more immersive or more realistic, whatever term you want to use. So our game will feature limited lives in that sense. It's not going to be one life, because we totally understand in the world of video games, like you have people
It'd
griefing,
be how boring that would be, yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
you have people griefing, or you don't want things to end up too static. There's a balance there. So it is just quite literally limiting the amount of lives that players have per session is the first and foremost. Um, in addition, having some kind of meta progress tied to how much you win or lose. Obviously, this will have to come with time, and this is just the scope of the game is very ambitious. We understand that it's going to take time to develop, but having a progression system, much like how Tarkov does, right? But having the incentives behind the progression in your account status be tied to not necessarily how many kills you got, how much XP you got, but how many times did you die? Right. And so now players have, just like in the real world, right? You want to live because you want to continue or progress through life, right? So if you want to
Interesting.
progress or push your account, like you want to win these games with as few deaths as possible. Just like Target, this is like not even a new, style of doing it. It's just going to be the reward system is slightly different. Um, your value is just going to be in surviving and doing things with as little as few deaths as possible. And that I think is a very unique reward system or very unique dynamic within our game specifically that we will have that is different from any of the other games besides Tarkov out there right now. And I think that is like a very key portion. That's where like a lot of the importance of the game or a lot of the design relies on players valuing their lives, just like real tactics do.
I got two questions because I know for sure. I believe this is strictly going to be PvP only. No, it won't be no PvE elements within the play area.
Correct. No,
Correct.
for the short term, no PVE.
Got it. Okay. And then second one was the influence factor of like gaining influence. Like normally, I'm thinking, uh, the armor missions of like gaining influence within the populace and stuff like that would be with other civilians or I guess one of them could be like taking out an ammo cache for a village, and that would be a way to gain influence. Is that gonna be something like that, or is it gonna be like how
Kind
you
of.
said, go into a circle and stand in the circle and gain influence for that village specifically?
Um, so the way specifically it works, or the way it worked in Dynamic Direction, which of course the main inspiration or source of design is when you
Hmm.
placed your objective, whether that be a cop or a hideout. So conventional forces get cops, combat outposts, and
Yeah,
insurgent forces get hideouts. And the insurgent forces get three hideouts versus the conventional one cop. Right? It's intuitive. It makes sense.
correct. I remember.
That's how
Yeah,
we asymmetrically balance. It's like the insurgent forces are faster. They're more spread out. They have maybe a few more lives just to give you a true, authentic guerrilla warfare feel. Um, so the way that it works is these objectives generate influence just on time, right? So after a certain amount of time, you'll tick up, you'll tick up, you'll tick up. But what we can do, which is a very interesting thing that we did in Dynamic Direction, is that hideouts and cops um, generate influence differently. So what I mean by that is the hideouts, if they're all up, we'll just make this math super simple because there's a whole algorithm behind it that I don't really want to
hmm
get too mathy with it all.
Please
But
no.
let's say insurgent hideouts have three tick one influence, and there's three of them. That means every tick you get three influence versus the conventional forces one, right? Now what does this do as a conflict driver? What does this do to the player base, right? And we had a lot of experience and insights doing this. Is that the insurgents feel a little bit more that they can play defensively, right? As is once again intuition, or just making sure it's intuitive and aligned with real world kind of thinking. That is kind of how insurgents are able to leverage their advantage. Is the fact that conventional forces usually have to go and patrol and root them out, right? So it's a conflict driver. It forces the conventional forces out of the cop and to go hunting on these search and destroy missions for the insurgent hideouts. So what you
hmm
end up seeing is this dynamic situation where you have conventional forces continuing to push out patrols and searching for these hideouts, and insurgent forces are able to leverage that. And sometimes they're able to set ambushes, right? Because the conventional force is going to come. Here's the thing: you don't know where all the objectives are, right? And that level of unknowing means that players are engaged at all times on the map because they're looking. They're looking. They're not like, oh, let me open the map. This is where I'm going. W key.
Yeah,
Uh,
one squad's doing recon while relaying information to another's, and then while another is already going on a search and destroy mission, so on and so forth, stuff like that.
Correct. You're looking at the terrain. You're looking around for clues of where the enemy are. You're looking to kill, and this ties into the intel system, which is like a subsystem. Um, but you kill enemies and you secure their bodies to get intel on where the objective might be. Right. So that's another conflict driver of you're not looking to W key into a circle and sit in a circle. You're actively looking for signs of the enemy position and objective, and you're also looking to find and kill enemy players. And that's just one of the things that I thought was super important because a lot of the design in the current platoon shooters, they aren't they aren't really focused on having you find and kill the enemy. That's not really a thing. The metas for a lot of these cap oriented game modes is I want to sit in the flag first and faster than you do and beat you to the next flag and sit in that fat flag before you do. And if I could, I would totally avoid every firefight possible because I just want to cap, win the game. And so that align or goal structure is I think very detrimental to the infantry tactical experience of find and kill the enemy. And so it was necessary that we
Mhm.
have conflict drivers that encourage the finding and destruction of enemy players and not the, oh, let me go here and sit in this circle.
Are those
Um,
are those hideouts, are they predetermined at the start of the game, or players choose where they build those?
Players choose where they build those. So once one gets destroyed, the insurgents will be able to place down another. And so you constantly have this like going back across many parts of the map. You're looking at certain things. You're looking at the terrain of where you're going to be placing them. There's a lot of other, very nitty gritty rules to avoid exploitation of certain game mechanics or certain cheesing that I don't I don't want to bore you with. But that is essentially the game mode. That's how players are driven to act within the circle, and that's how we get them to act the way that we want them to act.
And then when you kill someone, yeah, you get to like, instead of like looting them or whatever, you get to like, you get intel from them and like it narrows down the area of where
Correct. Yes.
the hideout could be. That's really cool. I saw that
That's
in
pretty
the
dope.
in the devlog.
Yeah. Mhm.
They're doing that. That's really cool. What kind of information do you get from them when you search the body? Does it just like kind of narrow down an area on your tablet or a directional area or?
Sure. So as you get more and more intel like that, there will be red circles that pop up that are overlaying, possible hideout or cop locations. And as you get more and more intel, those circles just naturally narrow.
How many players
it.
are on the
Okay.
map?
We're shooting for a platoon versus platoon gameplay, so we're trying to be up there as the standard is right now.
What is a platoon for those people like me?
So we're looking at 4 squads on 4
40.
squads at minimum.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Obviously, we are going to hope that we push 4 squad. I know some games do squads differently. 4 9-man squads against 4 9-man squads. That is the base experience. Obviously, there are technical limitations and optimization, levels we have to check that would possibly increase that number, and that's dynamic as we're in active development. So yeah, that's the intended experience. There are ways that we can expand it if we're able to, but that's currently the goal.
How have you found working with Unreal 5? It looks great. Like, but has it been like a challenge?
Sure, that is definitely like one of the best and worst things about the project is Unreal 5. And that's mainly just the cost that you pay being on the bleeding edge of anything, right? Is that you get to play with the new tools, there's new tech, there's cool new capabilities, but with that, there's a lot of, issues sometimes, whether it's on Epic side or just learning the tools, and like just the fact that there's very few, I should say, very few Unreal Engine 5 professional like experts, just because it is, rather new, and they really did have or rework a lot of ways of doing things. So it's been painful, but it's been very cool to work with the new technology. But yeah, definitely for sure it is. Just with any time you're on the bleeding edge of something, there's going to be issues and cons to that
Yeah,
experience.
well, like Unreal Engine 5.6 just came out, right? I think that's the latest
Yeah.
build for it. Yeah.
That's been kind of my answer to people who are frustrated with like kind of some of the optimization and stuff of Unreal 5. It's like we're getting into actually true like next gen titles, and I'm assuming that this game is going to take some time to get to 1.0.
Yes.
And like by the time it gets there, like a 40 series or a 50 series card could be like older tech. So you don't want a game that like when you finish it, it's already dated and needs an
Correct.
engine update. Like,
yes, we do a lot of future proofing. We do a lot of future proofing just because we know how large of a project this is and how long. Like, we're no fools. We know how long this is going to take to develop. And it is just the nature of the scale of realistic shooters, right? These games take a long time to make because everything needs to be done as authentically as possible, which means like the way everything looks, the way all the animations play, the way the lighting looks, the way all your nitty gritty ballistics or fragmentation, or because tactical shooter gamers and milsim gamers, they're very 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 detail oriented. So there's like very little skimping you can do compared to games like sci-fi games or fantasy games where it's like, yeah, it's magic. Right? It's like that's how it works, it's just magic, and you can skip explaining or having the details in a lot of systems. It's just a detail oriented crowd that we're appealing to, and it's going to take time for us to develop it. It's just the nature of things. We're not like a AAA studio with unlimited resources and whatnot. That's unfortunately a sad nature of the niche.
So one thing I did notice that I liked, and I kind of wanted to draw attention to and maybe ask a little more about, is in one of the devlogs, it showed like the team makeup, and it kind of showed an actual like breakdown of the roles and like who you would be under and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
for me, as like I like that as a non-veteran, like I've never been in the service, so I don't understand how like real platoons and squads and roles work out. So to see that like laid out for me
Hmm.
and see where you fit in the hierarchy is pretty cool. Um, and I like that a lot to kind of see where you plug into. Um, what kind of customization is there beyond that? Like once you select your role, is your kit like set for you? And you can kind of, I think you could kind of see it on the right side of the screen. I'm assuming the UI is probably not done, but
Sure,
um,
sure.
how does customization work for kits once you kind of select your role and where you fit in the squad?
Sure. So real briefly, just like I appreciate your words on the structure because that is like that was a problem that we saw that we wanted to fix is that if you make organization in these games too difficult or you make it too confusing, the players they just won't do it because
Yeah,
it's just like
I'm one of
it's like
them.
Yeah.
whatever, bro. I'm just gonna
It's
W
like,
key. I have no
Yeah,
heads
idea who
up.
I'm supposed to
yeah.
work
Yep.
with. Yeah, there's no structure, and
Who
even
would
from
be like
round to
that?
round, yeah, and even from round to round, there's like you have no idea what's going on. So players just like they give up. They give up because the structure is not in place, and you cannot expect every single person to like slot in like, oh, in a random open world sandbox environment, like, oh, I'm the machine gunner, you should take rifleman, you should take that, because like that doesn't happen. These people are gamers, like for the vast majority. Of course, there's a lot of service members that understand like but giving and creating a rigid structure, we hope, will solve a lot of those issues of like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be or who I'm supposed to listen to or like what my role is. Well, now you know. Now it is set for you. Now it is simplified, and of course that's going to turn some people away, but like that was the decision we went with, and we think it will pan out in the long term. As far as customization, so our game is going to have varying levels of customization, both on the cosmetic side and on the utility side. The customization on the customization on the cosmetic side, we've already showcased a couple of our skins already. As you can see, they're very grounded, they're very gritty. We intend to keep it that way, and the customization on the cosmetic side will be unlocked both through account progression. Once again, we have to develop this. It just takes time. It's just a very time-intensive thing. There's all the different art assets, all the different variations. It's just a lot of work, and we just have to get to it slowly. uh that stuff will be available to players to also flex. Like one of the design philosophies around cosmetics in our experiences, I harken back to my World of Warcraft days or my Halo days, where it's like you saw dudes with recon armor and you're like, oh, that is cool, that guy worked for that stuff. Like I can
Hmm.
Yeah.
recognize
Yeah.
that
We were
guy's
just
experience.
talking about that with the Hayabusa helmet coming out. And it's like it doesn't mean much anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and that's sorry, go ahead.
no, I was saying I remember that when Blue was talking about that, how it used to mean a lot, and then now you can buy it, so it's kind of like whatever.
Yeah, and the sub utility of that is like in a lot of these games, yeah, some of them have XP and ranks, and you can kind of tell how long people have been playing. But with the sub utility of that kind of customization and progression is the fact that you can recognize experienced players, right? And so that is important in experiences like this, is knowing like the experience level of certain people, so you know like what they're telling you is important, or who you can be in the
Yeah,
squad of and whatnot. So there's a sub utility there.
Hmm.
But in addition to that, the utility customization of things, it's not going to be like Escape from Tarkov. It's not going to be like Ground Branch or Arma, where like you're putting like a single bandage in, or you're putting like the different gas block on your gun or anything like that. It's definitely going to be more akin to like more simple utility systems, I guess, kind of like you could point to Ready or Not, where you pick
Sights,
like
muzzle brakes, stuff like that. Just
not
maybe
even not
grip
even
here and
that
there.
much. It'd primarily be sights for the weapon. Maybe there's a
Hmm.
little more customization on the weapon, but it'd be primarily like what kind of utility are you bringing? Are you bringing the assault ladder? Are you bringing the litter? Are you bringing like
Stuff
what
that's
kind
on
of
your
grenades are you
yeah.
bringing? Yeah, that it'd be more utility focused and capability focused than it would like the nitty gritty of things. And any weapon customization we do would primarily just be utility focused. It wouldn't be like this gives you +5 to ergonomics, or it wouldn't be that style of customization. It's purely
Is there gonna
focused on
be like rat
capability.
kits in the back or something like that, or is it gonna be like special assault packs that someone can choose and stuff like? Is it gonna be like that technical where maybe even someone can like reach off the the back of your gear and stuff like that too, or
We've toyed with those ideas, and those are definitely ideas that I do like, but we have not like developed anything of that sort at this point in time. But yeah,
Mhm.
I've thought
It's an
about like a
idea for
thousand
sure.
different yeah, a thousand
Yeah,
different things like that, because that would be
yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Blue.
breacher up, stuff like that, or so on and so forth. Someone, hey, there's just bolt cutters on the back of it. Someone can, you could, or he even the guy could reach above it, or there's a couple. extra or you know, ammo bears and stuff like that. You know,
Hmm.
there's so many routes you can go with that for sure.
I just
100%.
I just want Blue to be really proud of me. When he was talking about art direction and it takes time to design art, I almost threw in a Bungie joke about stealing art, but I didn't. So I just want the record to show that I'm behaving myself today.
I'm proud of you. I'm
Thank
proud
you,
of
That's
you.
man.
too funny.
I appreciate that. We're being professionals over here. This is a high quality show. Um, so along those lines of like your loadouts and stuff, I had a member of my Discord give me a few questions about like medic stuff. 'Cause he likes to play medic.
Hmm.
And you talked a little bit about progression. Are there any like skill progressions? How you can like, for instance, like if you're a medic, if you get like better at it, like faster, maybe heal times or something progression wise like that. And the other kind of more granular question was like if you're healing somebody else, which I believe I saw in the one of the devlogs, you can work on your squad mates. Do you consume your heals or their heals when you're working on somebody
Sure.
else?
So, I totally
Just
forgot the
wait.
first part of the question already.
Nice.
Like a
Oh,
medical
skills.
progression.
Right, right.
Yeah, skill
Okay.
cells. Yeah, skill set.
Yeah, we're not doing any kind of like XP gain skill unlock. Like, oh, I now do this faster because I've done it 15 times, like Tarkov or whatever. The
Hmm.
skills that we want players to have and players to exercise should be tangible skills like of the player themselves, if that makes sense. So it's like I got faster at medical because I now know the system good enough and I know the priorities of work that I should be going through and the things I need to be attending to, or like triage, right? Like when I've got 3 guys down, like my skill level is not that I've farmed enough points that I just do this faster. It's let me identify who I need to work on first, what body parts I need to work on first, what actions I need to take, and
Hmm.
go through that complex kind of gameplay loop rather than I've sat in a corner and I've drank this water like a billion times and now I drink water faster.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of when our mindset when it comes to skill. As far as medical items, a lot of that stuff honestly still has to be tested, but like that's just one of the things that I think gets in the way a little bit too much of some shooters is like the inventory management of things. I don't want that to detract from the experience of like, oh, I'm sorry, but I'm not rescuing you. This bandage is for me, kind of thing. Like you get a lot of that in
Yeah.
some
It's
games.
Yeah.
Uh,
I would
yeah.
assume there's like personal IFAKs hopefully on. I know it's probably still testing as well too,
Mhm.
but you know,
Yeah. What
yeah,
I can say
definitely a
is
lot
like
of times that happened in squad. Like it's like I'm out of bandages, dude. Sorry, you know.
yeah. We'll balance the medical in such a way that you were encouraged to help other people without making it gamified to where like you're an invincible locker of medical supplies and whatnot, is what I can say. Like
Hmm.
that's our goal. Obviously, there's still a lot of testing to come right throughout this month, this summer, excuse me. We're going to be doing a decent amount of testing and like things are always subject to change before 1.0 and even after 1.0 you might see a medical rehaul, but like our goals are such that medical should feel intuitive. It should feel maybe not completely intuitive. Definitely gonna have to learn a little bit of medical. Not too much.
Yeah,
Don't want to scare
yeah.
people away, but like you are
Gotta
gonna
go
have
to
to learn the
medical school,
base.
man.
Yeah, but you know, it's like okay, so someone who's done. I feel like I always myself, even like armor rolls and stuff like that, Reforger, armor 3, even squad. I tend to go. I used to choose medic all the time because that was like the first role I was told to choose as like a new
Mhm.
player. But I ended up like really enjoying that role specifically. So I was always making sure like even if I'm not a medic and I'm with other medics and stuff like that, I'm making sure, hey, stop that bleeding first before you treat anything else specifically. And you know, it's like, is it gonna be like ace level type medical stuff where it's
No,
like
no.
super intuitive or not super extravagant almost, but or I guess more of a like
Sure.
Reforger where it's just like look at limb here, a scroll wheel comes up and you know something like that.
So I'll just tell you how our medical system works currently and the features in it right now, just because
I
yeah,
know it's
so
subject everything's subject to change still for sure.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's very simple in that there's bandages and there's tourniquets and essentially chest seals, but those are just reskinned, bandages for your chest. And
Hmm.
so the
Hmm.
the main thing that we're having players learn at the beginning is like bleeding management. Like it's very simple
Correct.
stuff. It's just stop the bleeding. There's nothing past like that at this current point in time with hypothermia or respiratory or
Yeah.
airway stuff or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right now it's
No
just
no
bleeding
MPAs
management.
going into noses or anything. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's familiar to like kind of familiar to games like Tarkov, I guess you could say, where like the biggest priority in the March sequence and whatnot is just stop the bleeding, right? Stop massive
Hmm.
bleeding. And so like identifying what limb is bleeding the most and stopping that's like the first step, the first foray into the experience. And then just managing triage via multiple gunshot wounds to different areas or different players. That's like the first level of depth that we're getting into. The next like sub step that is that is available right now is the management of just a few kind of gamified drugs, but essentially uppers and downers to help manage certain states because the player can be conscious, unconscious, or incapacitated. And generally,
Hmm.
that stuff is left to the medic players to experience and to play through
To get,
and
yeah,
that
get them
gameplay
up
loop.
out of the unconscious state and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's blood, obviously, to heal people back. But that's like the
Okay. Okay.
extent of the beginning medical system. And I personally would love to see the system grow and develop. But obviously, like we're very cognizant that we don't want to shock the player base day one of like, all right, here's this manual, read this manual, and all the drugs and all the
Yeah.
different IVs you're supposed to take, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
So
that could be too much. Yeah.
yeah, so
Man,
it's
some guy out there who's listening to this that's like an actual pharmacist is like, damn it, it was my chance. Like I could have been so
Yeah.
great on day one. But
there's surprisingly a lot of those people with that mindset. They're like, I'm an ENT, I'm a combat medic, I'm a blah blah blah.
yeah,
Like
they
how in
just want
depth
to play
Yeah,
it
they
in the
want
game.
to
yeah.
do their
They
job
want to
in a
do it.
game. 100%. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
but unfortunately, it's not a medical simulator, so it's not going to be that. At least not at the start. Who knows in the future what happens? I'm going to ensure that whatever it is with medical, it is not too complex, but it is engaging enough that there's a skill cap and players feel rewarded for learning the medical system, without having to go to med school.
Awesome. That's probably a pretty good pocket to aim for. Um, with I know communication is going to be a big deal in this, and if like correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understood it on the devlog, there's going to be like the different radio channels for the different levels of command.
Mhm.
Um, is there going to be a potential way to be able to like maybe have a volume mixer to like maybe leave them all on so you don't have to switch between channels, but like
Sorry.
still be able to catch that stuff while you're in game so you don't miss something?
Definitely that's just like a technical thing that we can play with. What I can say with the VoIP system right now is we took a for that system in particular, we took a it's not broken, don't fix it kind of approach. So it'll be very
Hmm.
familiar to experiences that out there that you're playing now or that are being played now that it's not like, oh my god, I gotta learn how to actually work a prick 152 or like anything like that and work all the
Yeah.
different radios and knobs. It's not a radio simulator. So it'll be pretty intuitive. It'll make sense. Yeah, we're not really doing anything crazy on that front, just because we think that system works pretty good as for the standard of the niche.
Okay. And then one other one that I had about kind of like the logistics of the game from my Discord was with I know E-War is planned and some stuff like that. What kind of you've alluded to some of the things that are going to be in there in the devlogs. What are there going to be for like countermeasures to that? Anything other than like bullets?
So just like yeah, just like medical system, once again, we don't want to shock people with the depth of the experience. And the good news about that is that that is one of the advantages of an early access title is that the player base can grow with the game rather than having this massive monstrosity dropped on you day one and you have to learn every single like
Yeah.
aspect of it and play. So just like medical system, the e-war system is going to be relatively um, straightforward from the get, right? These drone operators, you'll have to learn how to fly the drone, obviously, and the different nuances of the drone and the different capabilities of the drones. But as far as countermeasures, it's shotguns or drone guns. Even there's a lot of jammers that have taken place. But just as with the real world right now, there's a lot of experimentation needed also in the gaming space. Is real world that those TTPs and those strategies for drones and what they're doing is changing super rapid. So we're just doing the research we can and seeing what is possible that makes sense in a video game. And yeah, it's going to be kind of dynamic implementation at that point. But that will be the first point that eWar update will be the first point where you'll see it introduced and you'll start seeing new systems being toyed with or played with or experimented with.
Cool. Yeah, that's exciting. That's gonna change things. I like the thought of that, like how the game's gonna change through the roadmap and stuff, and that's gonna add like a whole another layer to it with like getting intel and combat and stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then so far is it just gonna? I assume it's just gonna be this one giant map at launch. Is there thoughts of other maps later down the road?
Yeah,
I'm a map guy. I like
for sure,
maps.
100%. It's just like the fact of the size of the team at current,
Yeah.
and that's just a manpower limitation currently is
Hmm.
working on more maps. I mean, the team is
It's
only
tough.
17 size people right now, including artists, animators, programmers, etc. So like we have a very small level team comparative to like a lot of the other games out there right now. Obviously, as the studio is, gets more funding and we're able to continue, like if we grow, in funding somehow, we're able to increase the size, or when it comes to, early access launch, and the game is public, and we're those sales, increase the funding available for the team. We're definitely going to grow level design department, just because that is a critical part of the game. And my, I think and most people would agree with me that level is pretty important. And more maps are definitely things that we want to do. We don't want it to stay at one map like other games. We want to make sure that we can pump out super high quality large maps, just because that's the Arma player in me, and also just how the game mode is designed. It kind of requires large scale maps to work with, just to make matches feel dynamic, and to give you the scale that we're looking for. So more maps eventually. It's just a manpower and resource limitation currently.
Especially for
Nice.
how big those maps can be and how detailed you want to get them to be. And yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sure you could spend forever on like one map and just
Oh,
adding
dude. See,
art and
that's
different.
kind of to be honest, like even myself seeing it, like the level design stuff on, again, we're on UE5 as well too. Just I started to fall in love with level design specifically. But just the way collision works on stuff, and I mean, Unreal Engine 5 looks gorgeous for sure, but there's so many things of just like even storytelling aspects, like just the little details and how many assets are on the map and stuff like that. Like I can't even imagine on what was the scale size for those maps again.
This is 4x4, right?
Four by
Kilometers.
four, yeah, 4x4 for the
Yeah,
initial map. There's even a possibility that that increases. Like it's literally just a manpower and resource limitation. So
yeah,
yeah, we're
yeah,
going as
yeah.
fast as we can, as big as we can.
I kind of I kind of actually like that. I like the idea of like one big map, but each match or each round is going to be dynamic because it
It's like
uses a
different
different area
sections.
of it. So
Yeah.
you're playing
Mhm.
on a different
Mm-hmm.
area of the map. It's
Yeah, and that's
and I really appreciated what you said about
Like three maps in one.
how things can be like turn predictable and get meted really quick. I think that's one of my biggest gripes with games like Tarkov, like extraction shooters. Like like the difference between a good and a bad player, or a good and a less
that's
experienced
experienced player.
player,
Yeah.
is
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
start to learn timings and
Hmm.
spawns, and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, so I know someone's spawning over here. They're going to cross in this area in about 3.5 minutes into the raid when they're going to the main POI, and like you learn that stuff, and like being able to keep the gameplay dynamic and different every round. I didn't think about what you said, which I really thought was cool, was how the more you stray away from that predictability, the more you get like real world kind of survival, human instinct, and actual tactics to take place, because you're not playing like it's a game. You're playing like you're trying to solve a problem and work
Exactly.
together. And I thought that was really cool.
Hmm.
That you're thinking of that. That you said that, because
Yeah,
I
one
see that a
hundred
lot
percent.
too. Cool.
Any dynamic map changes that will happen though on those maps?
Yeah, so we're playing with that weather plugin that all the games are playing with, Ultra Dynamic Sky. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll see dynamic weather. It's a technical problem that we have to figure out. Is just making sure that we you won't see night for a while. That's what I will say. Is just because I know how much a
I was
problem
gonna ask that
night,
next too.
yeah, night
Yeah.
creates in PvP games. Is like there's got to be a lot of system support for night to take place, just with gamma boosting, with balance, etc. So you'll probably
Mhm.
see like some dynamic lighting change shifts, or weather shifts when we get to it. We're just focused on other core priorities currently, but that is definitely things that have already been experimented with or thought about, and things that we hope and plan to implement. In addition, we've also done some other things that I think are really interesting, which is like even just small changes on what doors are open and what doors are inaccessible, or what windows are open and what windows are inaccessible, like
Yeah.
microdynamic things like that. Because even other shooters that I know I've played, it's like, all right, if this is where we're fighting, I know the building I can go to, and I know the window that I can work from, just because I know this part of the map so well.
Oh, so it's gonna be like dynamic every single time you go to
Yeah,
that
every time the
same
map loads up.
village.
Yeah, like so
Got
those are
it.
things that we've
Okay.
also thought about as well. Like credit to Ground Branch. I think Ground Branch did it first with like there's that one CQB training map with the four buildings and the windows are dynamic there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
gave me the idea there. It's like, oh, that really matters, because it's like if I go to this map every single time and I know the exact structure and layout of the buildings, of the windows, like I know, okay, this window has this angle, and you start getting
Yeah.
meta gameplay factors there. But if you go into the map, you're like, oh, I actually don't know. Is this going to be open or closed this time? Then it just fundamentally changes the way that the players approach the map, which is the kind of thinking that we want, which is pay attention to what is happening right now in front of and around you, rather than using this information available on the
What you
map or
knew
previous
before.
experience that
Yeah.
you're just like autopilot doing things.
Same thing with interior as well too, prop wise.
To a lesser extent, like that
Yeah,
I
not like
think,
6 days
yeah.
in Fallujah type stuff.
No,
That
no,
one's
no,
really
no.
yeah.
Because that becomes a lot. There's a lot more props, obviously, that have to be shifted around indoors than just windows and doors. Like
Correct.
you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
shift like furniture and like all this stuff. So
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that will ever happen, or maybe it will. Who knows? That's a big question mark. Can't give you a good answer there. But doors and windows are a very, I think, simple one for us to randomize.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nice. Did you have any more questions, Blue, about the game mechanics itself? Because I want to talk about the marketing stuff and some kind of future stuff, but I didn't want
No,
to.
game wise, I see the vision more for sure.
Yeah, me too. That was really good
Yeah,
stuff.
I will say, I guess about for like 5 seconds. Wifey is calling me right now, so
Okay,
1 second.
sounds good. I will ask a question. I don't know if you can answer. Are you ready to talk about anti-cheat? Have you thought about that?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about anti cheat.
Okay. Yeah. What's on tap for that?
So we're just like easy anti-cheat is like the standards to go to. But obviously the last line of defense in all these platoon scale shooters is server admins.
Mm-hmm.
Server admins is like the surefire. Like obviously there's pros and cons of server admins, but for cheating wise, like server admins and server admin tools for them, like there's nothing better than having an active eye moderating a server. Like there's absolutely nothing better than that, because you can see when someone's wall hacking, you can see when someone's shooting grenade launchers and killing everyone from one side of the
Yeah.
map, and they can take immediate action. So server admins are our last line of defense. We also plan on being just very involved as a studio in regards to banning players and moderating the servers and whatnot. We don't think that a hands-off approach is the proper approach in that regard, because I think you see that from a lot of games where like they take kind of a hands-off approach when it comes to moderating their servers. And I think it's an important thing for studios to show like the standard or the be involved in that process to a degree, more so than just completely relying on the community. So yeah, it's a combination of those two, and we think we got a lot of the bases covered with those two.
Is it gonna be like a? Is there gonna be like a combination of like official servers and then also like community hosted servers and stuff? Is it gonna have like a rental server program or something like
Yeah,
that?
100%. A lot of these platoon scale shooters live or die based on the community. I mean, if you went through and you looked at all Hell at Loose and all of Squad's player counts, like I think Hell at Loose has some official servers, but I'm pretty sure like 99.9% of all Squad servers are community hosted. And like community culture and like clans and guilds and units and whatnot, like those are the lifeblood of this kind of niche within a niche, just because they're so dedicated. They train people, they moderate their servers, they host the servers. Yeah, community is a major part of our plan for the studio, and like they're like very much forefront in our minds as we develop systems and features. So yeah, there will be community servers. We see the community being a large part of the game itself. But like I mentioned before, that doesn't mean that we're going to be completely hands off in a lot of these, whether it's server hosting aspects or whatnot. I think you'll still see official servers and official, Bellum interaction on that side as far as servers are concerned.
Cool. And then this might be a really stupid question, because I'm not as in this space as like you and Blue. Are the when someone rents a server, is it like local on their machines? They have to have their machine running, or will you have like a server service where people can like rent them and then they just always are running, even if
It'll
the
be a
admins
server
aren't there?
service. Yeah, it won't be, you're running the server on your computer, mainly because we have to be a little bit more cognizant of kind of, I guess, malicious behavior, just because
Yeah.
we have a progression system. So we need
Oh
to have a
yeah.
little bit more control over that rather than just here are all the server files and then now you see like
Yeah.
24/7 XP farming.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so we need more control
That
over
happened
there
with
in that
Portal and
regard.
Battlefield, like right off the rib. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, so we'll be very active on that side and making sure that the experience is smooth. And that just once again, very unique position of ours, just having adwin.gg experience and like knowing what server hosting looks like, what game
Yeah.
distribution looks like, knowing what server hosts and community leaders want out of the system, just because we've been there. We're like,
You've been
I
there.
want this feature.
Yep.
Well, why is this not a feature? Why can't I do this? Like, and so we're very cognizant of all that, and we hope to have a pretty robust system in time.
Cool. And then quick question: server tick rate 60?
That's a very technical answer. I don't know if I can give you a direct answer right now, just because there's so much that has to happen in regards to performance and player numbers and whatnot. So yeah, that one, unfortunately, I can't give you like a straight up answer.
Understood.
Yeah.
So and then just for some a little bit of context to that probably oversimplified and dumb question that I asked. Is there's like you have like a budget for like rendering graphics, but there isn't, is there, or is there not like an also kind of a budget for that tick rate and that server net code to also like for optimization that makes it a challenge when you have like so much going on with like so many
Sure.
gunfights happening and all that
Yeah.
stuff?
So we've got a lot of people who are concerned about optimization on our side of things. When we released the ballistics devlog as well, like when we made the ballistic system, we didn't just use Unreal Engine's native ballistic system. We completely rewrote and optimized it so that it's many factors faster, especially at scale. So yeah, at every point, like there's certain budgets for certain things, and we just have to make sure that we're optimizing where we can, and we are taking into account like all the calculations, not just graphically, but all the calculations that are happening to make sure that the experience runs and it runs well with the player count.
Awesome. So I guess one of the things that I wanted to talk about too that raised my eyebrow was the decision to not Steam. I'm sure you've got this question in the past, and
Yeah,
I saw
for
the
sure.
reaction was kind of wild on Twitter and stuff. So what went into that decision, and why are we not doing Steam?
Sure. So as you can tell, like everything has been thought of. Like a lot of thought has been gone into pretty much every aspect of development. And this was definitely one that took a lot of our time. We had a lot of discussions about. And yeah, so let's just break it down. This is going to be a long answer, unfortunately, but there's a lot of things that in play. So the first and foremost thing is that when we look at tactical shooters in general, it is a niche within a niche, and we look at what the there's many things at play. Let me write this down so I can make this a cohesive statement. Okay, so there's the funding, there's the player base, there's what Steam offers, and our unique position. So once again, our studio is in a very, very, very unique position to do a lot of very unique things, and a lot of that has to do with like just the history of like what I've done in the content creator space and just my reputation and what experience we have. So, the experience being number one thing is trust and just understanding and knowing a brand to a degree, right? If I saw a game launch off Steam out of nowhere, that's an instant red flag, right? But I knew because of my branding and just my history on the internet, like we could kind of combat a decent amount of that because it is me, this is my project.
Yeah,
This is
the
it's
name's
I'm
there.
putting my name on it. I'm staking my reputation on it, and not only my reputation, but Wendigoon staking his reputation on it, Drewski staking his reputation on it. So that addresses the it might be a scam kind of feel, or at least we hoped. The next thing we thought about was the marketing of it, right? So Steam helps out a lot because what Steam offers is the marketing potential, right? Because it's discoverability. It offers the distribution of it, right, via game servers and just helping out with that infrastructure. And the third thing is the I'm sorry, we did discovering and we did marketability. Let's just cover those two before we get too in the weeds. So discoverability, that was one that was very, very, very touchy for us, or very a topic that we really thought about was how much discoverability did we think we had natively and how much did we actually want. So as you can see right now, just from all the discussion that's happening, from all the sales that have been made, the founder sold out, right, we are effectively able to market the game without Steam. Like it is 100% marketed to the people that we wanted to market to, and we did not need Steam to do it at this stage of development. And that is a massive caveat, is that what we are targeting right now is a niche within a niche that is an early access, right? It is just only the most hardcore people or hardcore fans are the people we want to buy the game right now. We do not
Mhm.
even want to cast the net too wide, because I've seen that happen in too many games where the net gets cast too wide to a general public player base. The feedback that comes in as is diluted, and the vision of the game can be warped as a result. So we very specifically targeted the niche within the niche that we knew was following this kind of news, that was looking out for this kind of news, followed the creators that we knew were following. And that is who we wanted to hit at this stage in development, because the game isn't even out yet. And we wanted people who understood what they were buying into rather than seeing a game on Steam, releasing it early access. And I know everyone has always seen the comments in any early access game, and you see like the fighting in the comments, like, you bought into early access. No, this is not what the game is supposed to be, blah, 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 blah. So we very specifically targeted this demographic, and we knew we could reach it because of our unique position as content creators. The marketing cost is also something that, you know, is very unique to our project, where we don't have really any marketing cost currently, or potentially, hopefully in the future, because of the reach that our channels have. And that's just another advantage that we did not seem to need Steam to rely on. The next one would be infrastructure, right? It's like, we've already had a ton of experience, and we have hardware and software set up ahead of time that, once again, unique. Not many game studios can launch with knowing that they have the infrastructure, experience, or setup behind it already, that we knew that we could distribute the game without too many issues. And we didn't need to rely on Steam for. That's the third one, is the finances of it all, right? And this is a big one because, you know, as I started to be on this side of the topic, or of games, right, on the development side, I started to see how finances impacted so much of the gameplay experiences that we have currently. So Steam takes 30% of every sale on the on the platform, right? That's just a fact. It is a large portion. Um,
That is
the
a big
strat,
chunk, especially if you're selling for a cheaper amount. Dang.
yeah,
That is a lot.
it is a lot. The thing that we wanted to keep in mind was, once again, in pretty much a lot of the design and just a lot of the marketing, is quantity over quality. We wanted the right people more than a whole bunch of people with like, and like, we can go. I wanted to go narrow instead of wide, right, with the marketing. And so with a 30% savings, we're able to target the people who actually understand and want the game and want this experience, and make up for it on that 30% side, rather than going wider and having a lot of people buy the game and be dissatisfied because it's marketed to the wrong people. It's not ready for them. It's not, the experience is you know, it's not meant for the general player base at this current point in development. Like, that's just the fact. It is meant for very hardcore, dedicated tactical fans, especially because there's so many systems we have to do before I would say it's ready for like mainstream consumption. And it's not even that mainstream is a target down the line. Because once again, I just want to make sure that we are able to retain a certain culture going forward, and making sure that the player base is big enough but not too small is like a very calculated decision, because we don't want, it is very hard to grow culture if you have too many players in flooded from day one. And that's like a long-term culture retention strategy that we have, is we're going to start relatively, you know, we don't want to come out blasting, right? We come out, we have a decent player base, we are able to retain that player base and train that player base, and over time we're able to keep and grow that culture as the game expands, because that is important to me. And I think that's something that a lot of games don't value, is the retention of that culture over time. And if you start too wide, it's super hard to retain it. So when a lot of people ask, well, how are you going to have, you know, long-term players understanding how to play the game? Well, you have to start somewhat small and somewhat calculated and retain it over time. You can't just blast it and hope that the masses understand from the get-go, especially with a game like this. So that 30% makes a difference here, right? Because if we attempted this strategy on Steam, we would have to sell a lot more copies and go a lot wider than what I think would make sense. So those are the main reasons. And like, funding is so important, and making sure that we have a long-term financial plan, just because games of this scale take so long to build. Like, they just do. They take a lot of money, they take a lot of time. You look at Squad, you look at Hell Let Loose, you look at Tarkov, you look at even Ready or Not, you look
Yeah.
at these are all multi-year, if not decade-long projects. They are hard to fund as well. You look at Bohemia, a 10-year, 20-year, you know, Titan in the Milsim area, they still had to release an early access title on Steam. You know, when Squad and Hell Let Loose released on Kickstarter, they also still offered like massive packages, $300, $500,000 packages on the Kickstarter, right? Like, it's just a fact that these games cost a lot. They take a lot of time to development, but you need to think of that beforehand. So you saw, when you don't have plans for that, and once again, unique position, because we're like the second generation coming out of these style of games, we're able to see and learn from the mistakes, or learn from history that has happened of the current gen shooters. You see, when publishers come in, it's a problem. You see, when any outside large interest comes in, it detracts from the experience. You can see games actively shift culture, as where they're asking, where do we get this funding, right? Because they've tapped out and Steam is eating 30% of sale, they ask, where do we get this funding? And one of the answers that you actually see for a lot of these games of where do we get this funding is more players. Problem, more players means the general player-based culture gets watered down, right? But you have to go wider and you make the game more arcadey so that it appeals to more people to continue funding for the project. So the foundation of the funding is very rooted in how we want to retain long-term culture and development, and how do we protect that. Of course, I'm saying all this, and even with me saying all of this, Steam is not off the table, right? It's not like, oh, we're never going to Steam. We hate Steam. It's never going
That
to
was
happen.
my next question.
Yeah, Steam is always like still on the table. Like if it has to happen, if it for the good of the game, for the life of the game, like we will do what is necessary for the life of the game. So my worries there are not necessarily yeah, it's not as concerning as it would be, okay, we're on Steam and now let's move off of Steam. Because once you're hooked into that infrastructure, it is much more difficult to do so rather than moving onto the platform. So I understand, and once again, all that to say, I totally understand all the criticism. I totally understand all the concern. It totally makes sense in every aspect, in every way, because there's a lot of things that we're doing that are unorthodox or like yellow flags to a lot of people. But
Mhm.
what I can say is to everyone is like a lot of thought has gone into every process into creating that experience that a lot of people want, and to creating that and maintaining it at scale. And once again, if we have to pivot, oh God, if you knew how many times we had to pivot to get to this point in the first place, we're not scared of pivoting. We'll do what we have to make sure that we can continue the dream, continue the project. Like staying adaptable is a core thing that indie games have to do. So yeah,
Mm.
whatever needs to happen in order for the game to succeed, and retain the vision, like we'll do, and we'll have to change plans. And I'm sure this won't be the first nor the last time that this will ever happen, or if it does ever happen, right? Having to make that Steam movement. But I hope like we're able to explain the reasoning behind it, and just kind of yeah, that like we plan to have all the refund support, all the review stuff support that Steam has. Like we're not trying to scam anyone, right? Like we're gonna build the thing. We have good intentions. We're not, that's what we can say from our side of the table. But I
Mm.
totally understand after years of just seeing how projects have turned out, how people have been
Yeah,
ripped
I
off.
would
I get
say
told like I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
yeah, it's very fragile all around, especially when they start seeing on UE5 specifically not on Steam. Yeah, it starts to raise a lot of quote unquote, like you said, yellow flags as well too. So I get
Sure.
it. I
Yeah,
get
and I
it.
totally
Yeah.
get it. But the thing is, like, we're determined. We're gonna get there. If there's concern, right? My best answer to all that concern is literally just wait. And that was kind of the bonus of doing the pre-orders thing instead of a Kickstarter. Is it's not like, oh, we need you to fund this or the game dies and
Yeah,
you're never
that's
gonna see
true.
it. The
So it was more of like if you want to support, you
Yeah,
can. If
and
not, we don't need it. And that was a big thing too. It's like a lot of these
correct.
games they might run out of funding by the time they want to get to 1.0. So I don't see that being an issue. But
Mhm.
also, you do have some pretty big backers that are putting their own money onto it as well too. So
And
Yeah,
you
that
did
was thought about deeply as well.
yeah, you did explicitly say like this game's coming out whether you pre-order it or not. So like you're getting it,
yeah,
out and playable whether or not. So I think that is an important distinction. It's not like a Kickstarter UE5 Unreal Engine or excuse me,
correct.
a
Yeah.
new early access Unreal Engine 5 Kickstarter. It's going to get done. It's not going to be crowdfunded. Like the funding will no doubt help and help accelerate
Mhm.
things doing it this way, but if you're nervous about it, it's perfectly
Completely
fine to
find it,
just wait.
totally understand, totally get it. Just if you're nervous about it, just wait. It's coming. Like it'll get there. It doesn't require anything other than your considered attention. Like that's all that's required. I totally understand all the criticism. Like that's part of the reason why I'm here, right? Because
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
exactly where these people are, and I've been like, where's the next game? Why do these games keep failing? Right? What do I do as an individual in that situation? With my unique experience and with my unique connections, do I do something to try to like make this game, or do we just continue watching these things come and go, come and go, come and go? So like
No,
that's why I
yeah, I
totally
get it. Yeah.
understand. It's like, sure, I get it. I've literally been exactly where all of you are. The great news is you don't need to throw any money at the thing. You can just sit and you can just wait and it'll get there.
Nice. Yeah, you can't really argue with that. You said you're gonna have like reviews and stuff, and you said you'll have refund support. So like if as long as like I don't know what other gripes you'd have with it.
The
Doing it
biggest
this
one is
way.
player base, the right? That's the biggest one I see is like, oh, if it's not on Steam, it won't have a player base. Like that's like The
To
joke
be
I
honest,
always throw
your
out
name will bring a player base. So
to a
you know,
degree. Yeah, there's
to a
2 points
degree,
on that.
to a
It's like
degree, yeah,
we've already proven like with how fast like from our side how fast founders sold out and like how that's going. Like we've already shown like internally that okay, like our marketable reach is once again unique position. We're able to succeed without Steam's discoverability. But also the
What?
joke I throw out is like the only tactical shooter that has released off of Steam is Tarkov, and that exploded and did massively well. That's a
Yeah.
joke, obviously, because Tarkov is a completely different genre and game. But like,
yeah.
it's I think if you build it, they will come. If you build the right thing, if you build a good thing, people will come. I don't think being on Steam is required.
Well, because
I would
you're
lose
not reaching
track.
for the massive audience as well too. That's
Sure,
the
That's
thing.
yes,
Yeah,
and that's really interesting that you say that, because I have noticed that. I feel like there are games that like do Steam and they get a ton of hype, and then they get a huge kick of players at the beginning, and then it drops way off, and sometimes first impressions are everything and they never get that back. But then you see
yeah.
games that start out slow, kind of under the radar, like grassroots stuff. If you want to see something interesting, go look at the player numbers for like Rainbow Six Siege. Like over the years, it started out really low and just grew and grew and grew. And I could see that happening. And this is going to be really interesting because I love watching stuff like this to play out. I'm just very interested in it to see how it's going to go. And but to kind of you're setting up a situation for that organic word of mouth growth. And like by the time it's good enough for like a friend to tell a friend about it, like then when they get into it, they're probably going to enjoy it and they're going to stick around, and they're not going to get like a rough first impression, like when the servers get smacked by 100,000 people or something crazy.
yeah,
It's cool. It's you're fostering an environment, in my opinion, for that sustainable growth instead of like a
exactly.
flash in the
Yes.
pan kind of thing that we've seen happen several times. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's very much the strategy is like we don't want to come out big, oh, 50,000 players at launch. Like we're not prepared for it and the players are not ready for the state that the game is in. Like I'm comfortable, like we've set it up long-term strategy wise and behind the scenes wise, and like we've already thought about it. Like, yes, we're okay with this being a slow burner. We're okay with it. We have a couple servers up and we grow and we grow and grow, and we make the game better and better and better. And then once it's ready, like you said, for the general population of like, hey, here's my friend that's never played a tactical shooter before. Like, okay, here, play this game. Oh, there's a new player pipeline. Oh, there's things set up that make it like so you don't have to be an expert in these kinds of games to understand how to play it.
Yeah.
Then that makes sense for like a large release, right? But hey, if they're not ready, if people are not ready to buy in at this time, totally understand. Just wait. Just wait. That's all you got to do.
Cool. Man, that was awesome. I think that covered everything I had. I do have pulled up on the screen. If you guys are interested, it will also be in the show notes for the audio folks. Go to playbellum.com, and that's where you can see all the editions and pre-order if you choose to support at this time. If you do want to just follow along, there's a link for Discord in there where you can join the community. And I'm sure in the Discord, there's all kinds of discussion and news will be dropping in there all the time. But that's a place you can find everything Bellum if you want to follow along with the development progress of the game as they get closer to some closed testing. And then there's also the roadmap that talks about like when open beta will come. Was it in the winter, right? For like
Yeah, or near the end of the year, we expect like the early access launch, and that's when we expect like players that will be able to come in and play, and it'll be once again, it's gonna take time. Like this stuff is just such a massive undertaking, but that's when we think the main gameplay loop will be playable, it'll be an experience. Um, Obviously, it's going to be rough. I'm not going to lie about that. Like, it is going to be a little rough around the edges. That's the whole purpose of an early access release. But yeah, we're just going to continue working on it. It's going to get there. It just needs time. These games just require years, years, and years. Hopefully, we'll cut down on
Yeah.
that dev time because we have.
Yeah,
Well,
hopefully not a
yeah,
10, 15-year
yeah.
process.
I'm hoping this is not a
Yeah.
10, 15-year process, but it's a massive
I'm not
undertaking.
getting any younger over here. No.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, holy cow. Did you have anything else, Blue, before we wrap up?
No, not really. I mean,
Covered a
the
lot
one I
of
think
stuff,
pretty
man.
much, yeah, he covered a lot. He definitely answered a lot of my questions. I know. I was just curious more of like how that conversation went with Juski and Wendigo and how to like bring them onto the team. I know they're close personal friends, but like, was it like,
Sure.
hey, you want to help my game? Sure, or I'm sure it
Um.
was more detailed than that.
Sure. So I think Drewski and I are we very much play the same games, like the niches within the niche. We talk a lot in
Hmm.
general. And he's always been interested in. I've always invited him to like the unique events that we've had or unique experiences, whether that's KC Lib or the COG 4 stuff or the COG operation stuff. And he's played my dynamic direction and mod in the past, so he's followed like my history of it all pretty quite closely. And when
Yeah.
I talked to him, like I could tell he understood that I knew what I was talking about when in terms of like the game design for a military or authentic FPS. And typically in the past, like he's always enjoyed those events, and those events have always performed well for him. So I think he already, he had a taste of like what I was trying to do already, and had. I'm very fortunate to have that trust that he afforded me, and yeah, he's just solid and he's experienced. He just understands. I guess that's like the easiest way to put it is like if you've been following my channel long enough, which obviously not everyone has, and it's a very few amount of people that have followed like my entire career in the niche within the niche space. But if
Mhm.
anyone has paid attention and followed like what I've done over the years, like they see like the experiences I've made, they've participated in them, and they understand the core philosophy of like what I'm trying to do. And that was, I think that's where a lot of the initial buy-in is like just people who understand. And I don't expect everyone to understand, once again, why we're not on Steam, because I don't expect everyone
Yeah.
to understand. It is very complicated, it is very complex. We're doing a lot of unorthodox things. But yeah, I'm very fortunate to have the trust of those individuals.
Cool,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, it's so small. Everyone kind of tends to get to know each other and stuff like that. So I totally
Hmm.
get it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
man.
Cool.
Thank you so much, dude. Thank you for your honesty, letting us ask whatever and talk about whatever, and like all the information was awesome. And thank you most of all for your time, man, coming on to our, I mean, we're not a huge show. Thank you for your time and coming on to our little corner of the internet over here. We have an awesome group of listeners and stuff, and audio listeners, which I can't announce. Shout out, we did cross 20,000 audio downloads. It's pretty cool for podcasts getting going. So that's pretty sweet. And yeah, so thank you to all the audio listeners and Blue for setting this up, and for Karma for your time, man. I can't thank you enough for coming over to our little show, man. Really cool to
No,
have you. It's an honor.
I really appreciate it. I don't get to yap, like I said, this in depth about a lot of the I can yap to the team, but they have to be there. I'm kidding. No.
Yeah,
It's
good
nice to talk
audience.
about this
You
stuff.
gotta
Yeah,
like it, sit there and listen.
yeah. So I'm happy to share these things, and I'm happy always talking about it. So anytime, anytime.
Yeah, man, that's my favorite part about like having the show. It's always like a scheduling night where everybody gets busy for life with life and stuff, and it's like, man, we got to make time for a show and stuff. But we work to
Yeah.
keep it going because it is awesome to have like a long form venue just to talk, man. Like
Mhm.
just to not have like a hard time limit. You can talk about the stuff you're passionate about, and it's really cool that we have listeners that come by and hang out with us while we do it. So just a
Mhm.
lot of
I'm
appreciation
sure
all the
we'll
way
I'm sure
around.
we'll get you back in the show maybe another 6 months when open beta is going or something like
For
that,
sure,
and
for
we'll
sure.
see the progress from there for sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we love following stuff like this and supporting projects in our little way we can, because whenever indie developers can succeed, I think we all do, because we just start to see games that push the envelope a little more. They don't have to play it safe. And you see it, just a lot of passionate devs that
I
care
feel
so
like
much about the
yeah.
project and not about investors.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's the next
Um,
generation of gamers, man.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, been doing this too long.
I don't want
Yeah.
to hear
Oh,
I don't
jeez.
want to hear any old jokes, because they inevitably get aimed at me. All right.
Too funny.
All right. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. If you guys do want to support the show, there are tons of free ways you can do it. The main one is be a friend, tell a friend, share this episode with folks you think might enjoy it. Bring somebody back with you next week. Audio listeners, thank you guys so much. We've had some really crazy audio download days over the last couple weeks. So, and I think that is due to you guys leaving us reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you got a second, drop a 5-star review. I think it helps get our show recommended from time to time. So there's tons of free ways you can help out the program, and we appreciate all of it. Thank you to Blue and thank you to Karma, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great week, guys. Thank you.
Later, guys.